This is basically what you came here for. Okay, so in this video, we're going to do a comparison for all of the spears for Xiao and make some assumptions and calculate some numbers. So this is the damage formula that we're using, and we're assuming we're using it for Xiao's elemental skill. All of the 4-star spears are R5, all of the 5-star spears are R1. We're assuming they're level 90. The skill is at level 6. The multiplier is about 3.5, so it's not the one shown here, and then substats are 20% crit rate and 50% crit damage. So here you can see all the different artifact combinations. You can read the headpiece, cup, and timepiece horizontally, and we have the maximum values that we use in yellow and the assumed substats on the bottom. So the purpose of this test is to compare all of the spears based off of the guaranteed stats which you can achieve without much RNG. So we're not considering perfectly rolled substats and optimization too much here. You can see that as you do approach optimal cases, then those perform better. This is mostly just to provide a baseline from where the spears may be improved from. So these are pretty cheap to get. We're just assuming the substats. Those are the only extra things. Everything else is guaranteed. And everyone can tailor or pick which weapon they need based off of what artifacts they have so that they can achieve kind of a good ratio. Alright, so this graph basically shows for each of the spears how they react to the different artifact combination sets. I just chose the highest 3, which are crit damage, crit rate, and attack for the first, for the headpiece slot, and then the other 2 are the same, they're elemental bonus and attack. So you can see how each spear reacts to kind of switching that main slot from crit damage or crit rate or attack. And you can see where they're deficient in which stat they need. So for example, Blackcliff really needs a lot of crit rate in order to do better and kind of get closer to the golden ratio. So you can just use this as a little indicator. These are not ordered obviously in terms of damage. So these are ordered in terms of damage, and we consider the maximum numbers from the best combination set from the other graph. So the first thing I'd like everyone to notice is where the Blackcliff and the Lithic both lie. So they lie in 2 places. One place is at the top and one place is about halfway. So when they're at the top, this is assuming that they are R5 and they have full stacks. Basically, no other weapons actually have stacks. They don't have passive that scales so much. Usually their passives are pretty constant and they don't change too much. The Lithic at 0 stacks and Blackcliff at 0 stacks are down here. The Lithic has 1 stack because Xiao's always going to have at least 1 stack. He can't have less than 1 stack because he's probably going to be from Leeway. These 2 are also a very good representation of how these 2 spears would act if they're close or at R1. So this is the same performance as an R1 with 0 stacks. An R1 with 4 stacks is going to be a little bit higher up. So these are the numbers for the non-crit values, and you can see what the input for the attack, crit damage, crit rate, and elemental bonus were, and how they kind of changed, and how I got the numbers exactly. These are the critical damage values, so these are probably the highest-ish values that you can see from these hits that would be printed out on the screen. But if you do have substats, that will definitely change how these output. But you can check yours. If they have an attack, a crit damage, and a crit rate very similar, then this should actually be relatively accurate. These are the maximum values. So highlighted in green are the largest values for the average damage that each of the artifact sets would do for each of the weapon. So we're assuming the best case artifact combination, and we're using that maximum value. I put them together here so you can see them at the top, and then in the bottom what I did is I highlighted where there's deficiencies in either the crit rate, crit damage, or attack. So all of these ones with yellows are not basically, I would say, having almost a fair comparison because the ratios are off and they're not basically ideal or close to the golden ratio. So these ones I would say are naturally deficient in substats, and adding 20% crit rate and 50% crit damage doesn't get them exactly to the ideal golden ratio. So you're going to need to kind of figure out what you need and then play around with your ruin artifacts and try and make that ideal ratio. I wanted to point out that Jade is one of these that doesn't exactly have a perfect ratio, and that's why it was actually coming behind the Blackcliff and the Lithic at full stacks, because those two are the only ones here that are actually able to achieve a very, very good ratio between attack, crit damage, and crit rate. So with the Jade, you need to make sure that you actually do get the correct substats, and if you can do that and make the correct ratio, but otherwise the point here is that it is naturally deficient in a little bit of attack and crit rate, assuming that you do have only 20% crit rate substats and 50% crit damage substats. So other than these being a little bit unbalanced due to the deficiencies inside of these kind of artifact combinations, what else are we missing on this graph that we're not accounting for? So we're missing energy recharge values. So the Star Glitter has a energy recharge substat, the Skyward Spine has an energy recharge substat, and the Favonius Spear has an energy recharge substat and basically a passive that acts almost like an energy recharge substat. So that will make all of these weapons a little bit, like quite a bit better, and I take this into consideration when I do the tier list at the end of the video. Some of the weapons are missing attack as damage bonus, so I didn't include that in the calculations because I still need to figure out how to exactly get the perfect numbers. But Crescent Pike has an attack as damage bonus, which is effectively a secondary attack with every other attack. This contributes to a massive amount of its total damage and is very important and is what makes Crescent Pike such a good weapon. The problem is that it's not going to work on plunge attacks. And yeah, we're thinking that Xiao is going to be doing a lot of plunge attacks when he's in his ult form. The Skyward Spine also has this. I did not include that, so you can think of the Skyward Spine shifting a little bit left on the damage graph that I showed you before. Dragon Spine also does this, but it's probably the weakest one. It occurs once every 10 seconds or something, and it is AoE, but I haven't heard a lot of people saying that it's too good. So it's just something to consider when we're making the tier list at the end. The last thing is physical damage bonus, which is basically going to only apply for charged attacks and normal attacks, and it applies to Crescent Pike and the Dragon Spine Spear. Alright, so this is the part that everybody's probably been waiting for, and probably the part where I want to take all of that information that we took and just kind of put all of these spears into different tiers and see kind of what order I think you should be looking at them and what you should consider. Some of these can move around up or down by maybe one tier, but it should be relatively accurate in my opinion. So first, considering the Lithic Spear, it's going to be S tier. We're going to talk a little bit more about why that is. Homa, S tier, it's a 5-star spear. Blackcliff, also S tier. Crescent Pike, this is a questionable spear. If you do, for some reason, do a physical damage build and you build around all of the strengths of the Crescent Pike, you can get a really good result. And this can be A, honestly, potentially even S tier. I'm not sure, you'd have to be very, very focused on it. But we're talking about Xiao, and he's got an elemental skill and an ultimate where he infuses anemo damage bonus. This spear gives a physical damage bonus substat, and that's not going to apply there. Its passive is going to be applied on normal and charged attacks, but it's not going to be applied for plunge attacks, which I think most of us are going to be doing based off of what we've seen so far. So that's why I'm going to put the Crescent Pike in the B tier, because it's not a bad spear, but it just doesn't fit Xiao the best out of every other spear. Deathmatch is an S tier spear. It's extremely solid, it's very consistent. Its base attack is a little bit too low, which is probably the only detriment, but its passive gives you a ton of attack, and if you do refine this very high, it's going to make a massive difference. Dragon's Bane. Dragon's Bane does not have a bad effect, but it just doesn't work on Xiao at all. And it gives elemental mastery, which you also do not want basically on Xiao. You don't want that on too many people. So I'm going to put this in D tier. Dragon Spine Spear. It's got the attack is damage passive effect. So at least that's going to work on Xiao. And then it has the physical damage percent bonus. That's not going to work on Xiao. So it's going to work but only on normal attacks, but not most of the time. So I don't think it's as good as Crescent Pike because the passive effect is not as good as this one. But it is better than Dragon's Bane, so I'm going to put it in C tier. Favonius. You can basically build a burst spam Xiao, but because he's a main DPS with a massive base attack, I would not recommend this. Literally any other spear that will scale or give any attack percentage that scales off of his base attack will have a much better effect on Xiao than just going pure energy recharge. If you don't have any spears and you might be waiting for something like the Lithic, then I would recommend you could use this one. Now I think it's a little bit better than Dragon's Spine, but damage wise it's about, overall it may or might be the same as the Crescent Pike or a little bit worse. Definitely on normal attacks it's not going to do so well, but if you're focused on getting your ultimate and you do have other good substats, it can do pretty well in my opinion. Jade Spear is triple SSS tier, whatever. And let's talk about Skyward Spine. So Jade Spear, it's basically his spear. It's designed to be for him. You just need to, I think, watch out. From what we could see is that it wasn't much further ahead of everything, because naturally it doesn't have enough substats to sort of reach the correct ratio. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you do have the correct substats and that your ratios are correct. If you mess up your ratios, then this spear can, I think I'd say, severely underperform its maximum potential. So you just need to make sure that your substats and ratios are very good on that. Skyward Spine gives you basically everything. It gives you crit rate, it gives you a 12% attack speed increase. So I think that means you're basically getting 12% more attacks in. You're getting energy recharge. It's just very good. It gives you so much that I would put it above the kind of S tier Spear of Homa, because the Spear of Homa doesn't fit so well, but Xiao can utilize everything that this spear is giving him, and you're going to be getting your burst off more often than with something like the Jade Spear, unless you have a very good team comp to complement the Jade Spear. Prototype Grudge or Prototype Star Glitter now. I'm going to put it in A because the energy recharge is very favorable for Xiao. That's something that you're going to need, and some of us, if we're not able to use Xiao's ultimate off of cooldown, then that's because we basically don't have enough energy recharge. So this is going to give us that, and then it gives us an attack percent or more damage through the passive. So that's always good. The base attack is not the best in the world, I think, but it's pretty solid. Royal Spear. I'm going to put that ahead of the Star Glitter because it just does a little bit more damage, I think. And Xiao is a damage dealer, so that's what we're kind of focusing on. But these two, I'd say they're both in A tier. They're very close between each other. The problem with the Royal Spear, it has great base attack, but it doesn't have enough crit rate. Its effect does not give it enough crit rate compared to something like the Deathmatch, which is not an effect, but the Deathmatch is giving much more attack percent, and its substat is crit rate. But for the Royal, it has a attack percent substat, but it's not getting enough crit rate, so that's just not good. Vortex Vanquisher, I'd have this in S or triple SSSS. Basically, to be up here, you need a shield on, so you need someone like Albedo or any Geo character that's popping shields onto your Xiao, and you need to make sure they're on all the time, because it basically doubles the passive attack bonus, and that's what will bring it from S without a shield to SSS. So, yeah. Alright, let's talk about the Blackcliff and the Lithic, because I skipped over those a little bit. I just threw them in. The Blackcliff. With 0 stacks, these two are in A tier. They are a little bit above these, but they will not compare with the Deathmatch or the Homa. If you have full stacks though, then these basically go up here. Now, it's hard to keep full stacks in every situation for these two, and that's why we can assume that we can definitely have 1 or 2 stacks most of the time. So it's going to be above any of the A tier spears, and it's going to be somewhere in this S tier among these ones. So you can probably get close to Deathmatch, but with the Blackcliff you always need to be worried about getting your kills. Otherwise, the base attack is good and it's giving you a ton of crit damage, which is really, really good. Lithic, assuming that the stats don't change, it has a ridiculously high base attack. It's only about 50 or 40 lower than the Spear of Homa, or the Staff of Homa, and that is insane. Then if you can refine it to 5 and then get all of its stacks, it gets 28% crit rate and 44% extra attack, which is why in that graph it was basically coming out here. If you can utilize these stacks fully, then these two are very easy to build without many substat considerations, and they already line up into a perfect ratio right off the bat. So that's why in my last few videos I was very focused on these 3 spears, because I think they're all very good. The Lithic might get completely changed because it's not in the game yet, so if it gets nerfed, just know it's dropping from here. But if it doesn't get nerfed, what I think you should focus on is making sure that you do have some kind of leeway team with a lot of as much support as you can, and start thinking about that if you really want to use this Lithic, because if you can utilize it fully and make it work with Xiao, it's going to do a lot of damage based off of the stats that are up now. But yeah, this is basically what you came here for, and I hope that this provided a little bit of insight, at least from all of the research and little numbers that I've crunched. This is something like this, and you can read it from left to right. Jade would be the best, then Skyward, and etc. This would be the order I would pick my spears in. I'm using the Blackcliff personally because I'm free to play. This one's not out, can't get this, and I don't have any 5-star spears. So it came down to Blackcliff for me. Otherwise, if you want to think about getting the Lithic, something like the Royal or Star Glitter, even the Pike or the Favonius, these would all be good placeholders if you can suck it up and, I don't know, hold it for a month or 2 until this Lithic comes out, and pray that it doesn't get nerfed, because it is very, very good. Otherwise, if you do want more flexibility, this one's really good. Royal is probably okay. Blackcliff is sketchy, but it's really good once you get it going. And Deathmatch is honestly, if you want to be safe, it's the most consistent, chill option that you can pick. If you like the video, please like and subscribe for more Genshin Impact math analysis. In the next video, we're going to probably try answering the question, how much HP does Hu Tao actually need? And we're going to be comparing her to just a pure damage build and seeing what the kind of numbers say, and even maybe with the Homa, the Spear of Homa. But yeah, have a nice day.